All right, welcome again, everybody. This is Group Two's presentation. They're going to be talking about osteopathic medicine. They've prepared what looks to be a well-organized PowerPoint presentation for you. They're going to be setting a good example for all of you of what I might be looking for, what I might expect from this point forward. So I'll turn the time over to them. Once we're done with that, we'll have a little question and answer, and then we'll be on our way. All right, guys, you're up.
All right, we answered, what is osteopathic medicine? Next slide. Why is there a second medical degree separate from an MD? Andrew Taylor Still was an MD in the 1800s who felt that medical practices of his day were ineffective and harmful. He created a way to treat the whole patient. He focused on the importance of the musculoskeletal system and preventative care. This new medical approach is called osteopathic medicine. This second degree is called a Doctor of Osteopathic Medicine degree, or a DO. Next slide. This is a quote from Andrew Taylor Still. A student of life must take in each part of the body and study its uses and relations to other parts and systems. Next slide. The first osteopathic medical program was opened by Dr. Still in Kirksville, Missouri in 1892. It's now called A.T. Still University of the Health Sciences. Next slide.
Okay, this is me. So how does osteopathic training differ from traditional medical school training? As you can see, I listed out some of the different requirements with DOs and MDs right here. In the DO category, you can see that the DOs are required to do osteopathic manipulative treatment training. So they use a lot of hands-on techniques. They, are required to have so many more hours, even than the MDs, with using their hands to manipulate, bones and, maybe like with perhaps, putting a dislocated shoulder back or something like that. I would probably trust a DO, maybe even a little bit more than an MD, because that's kind of their area. Also, I kind of found in my research that the emphasis was kind of on preventative medicine, which is actually kind of surprising, especially for the U.S. We really, our culture kind of focuses on curing people when they've already gotten themselves into trouble or treated their bodies bad. But so it's always refreshing to see when there's a focus on preventative medicine. But anyway, they tend to be primary caregivers, especially in rural areas. So a lot of family doctors as DOs. Anyway, on the MD side of things, there's also, obviously they go through various training just as a DO does. Let's see here. Their training focuses on the maintenance of health and of the prevention side of things, and also acute care. Skipping down a bullet there, they tend to practice in a larger range of settings. So, they often, MDs will branch out, tend to go into surgery or a range of specialties. They tend to go into academics and teaching, and also in the laboratory with research and things like that. One interesting thing about the DOs and the MD requirements is that MD school seems to be a lot more competitive. Typically, the MCAT scores and the ACT scores are lower when somebody is applying to DO school. This can be, because of this, people can kind of tend to look at DO schools like a fallback. But obviously, the DO schools don't like that, and they're like, don't look at it like that, and you should still try to be competitive, obviously. But yeah, I guess going to the next slide. Do I have? Okay, perfect. Thanks. Are there feelings of competition between MDs and DOs? I would say yes. I guess it kind of depends, where you're working and things like that. But like what I was saying in the slide right here, based on the fact that the applicants of DO scholars tend to have those lower scores than the allopathic schools, there seems to be some form of competition. Like when a DO, I worked the last few years as an ER tech in the emergency room, and I got to kind of see that dynamic a little bit between the DOs and the MDs. And I actually heard a doctor, a DO one time said, he said one time, he said that, I could have gotten into MD school. I could have done that if I wanted to, which kind of struck me because I was like, okay, he feels like, maybe he could have stepped up his game a little bit or something, which I thought was interesting. Not that he needed to prove anything, but I just, coming from him, I thought that was interesting. But like I said on the bottom of the slide there, the irony is that the DOs have some more requirements, especially like with the additional 200 hours of the OMT training. And so, it's interesting. They can even have more training, but feel like they fell short or something. So interesting. I guess that's it for me.
All right, the locations of osteopathic medical schools. There are 33 colleges. They're in 31 states. 6 are publicly controlled and 27 are private institutions. As you can see in the states that are in gray are all the states that have osteopathic medical schools. Next slide. The top 3 osteopathic medical programs. It looks like Oklahoma State University, A.T. Still University, and Des Moines University. Looks like you got to have an average GPA of a 3.6, so you got to have pretty good grades to get into those schools. You got to have an MCAT score average of 27, and it looks like they're pretty expensive. Me personally, I probably shoot for Oklahoma State because it's a little bit on the cheaper side, but the other ones are pretty expensive. Next slide.
Hey Rod, is this per semester? Do you know?
I think it's for the year.
Is it?
Yeah. Some of the principal figures, a couple of them. A.T. Still, Jill did a great job explaining about A.T. Still and Irvin Core. A.T. Still was actually the founder of osteopathic medicine. He emphasized the focus on bones as a starting place to discern the cause of pathology. And Irvin Core was the second great osteopathic philosopher. Core actually expanded Still's concepts and included the integrative activity of the spinal cord and its relationship with the neuromuscular and sympathetic nervous systems. Next slide.
Okay, I guess that's me. So I did an interview with a buddy of mine who actually just was finishing up his residency after doing his DO training. And when I asked him about why he decided to go into that side of it to become an osteopath rather than an MD, he said that one of the main draws for him was that the class sizes are a bit bigger, which allows for more people to be able to get in. Not that their training is a lot different on the medical side. There are obviously there's a bigger emphasis on preventative care and then musculoskeletal manipulation and things like that, as was discussed a little bit earlier. But he was more interested in the class size because he felt like that created a better environment for more competition and more intercourse of ideas between classmates and that kind of thing. He also mentioned that DOs are heavily recruited out of BYU, which is where he went. And as far as the differences between DOs and MDs, like I mentioned a little bit before, the knowledge that they acquired during their training obviously is going to be pretty much the same. I mentioned the musculoskeletal manipulation and chiropractic techniques that they use in order to help, with their view of how to treat people is not just the base minimum of, okay, here's the problem, let's give them this medication or this surgery or whatever. They kind of look at it as a bigger picture of complete health. So preventative care, nutrition, all that kind of stuff. And then one thing he mentioned is that, so we talked a little bit about the bias that DOs kind of deal with. And he said that for him, in his experience at least, the bias that he felt was in trying to get into residency programs. I guess a lot of residencies only will accept MDs, although they're not supposed to, but he says that there is kind of a bias for that. And he mentioned a whole slew of qualifications that he has. He had published papers and done research with different doctors and had top of his class, all that kind of thing. And he applied to these schools that were kind of prestigious, and people who got lower grades than him that were, in the MD category ended up getting in over him when he was, kind of top of his class. So it was kind of interesting to talk about that. The other thing he mentioned in regard to any kind of bias or competition between DOs and MDs is that when he felt that from the top down, but not really from his peers. So the people running the programs are typically the ones who have had that bias kind of ingrained in them. But he said that he didn't feel that from his peers, and so probably in the next 5 to 15 years, he said that's probably not going to be really an issue anymore. So I thought that was interesting as well. Can we go to the next slide, please? Okay. So this is talking about Abraham Flexner's report. Abraham Flexner was a guy who he didn't believe that the universities or the training programs for the medical industry were united in their standards. And so he went around to all these different medical schools and universities and places all around the United States. And he kind of looked at them to see if they were performing the way they should be, and to try to make a way where they could all be teaching the same things, and so that we could have the same standards across the board. He visited about 40 states and reported on their quality. Let's see. And then I'll just read this one because it was interesting. Johns Hopkins Medical School was the first to become what the foundation was striving for. It was the first medical school in America of genuine university type, with something approaching adequate endowment, well-equipped laboratories conducted by modern teachers, devoting themselves unservedly to medical investigation and instruction, and was its own hospital in which the training of physicians and the healing of the sick harmoniously combined to the infinite advantage of both. So in a lot of these institutions before he did this, there was kind of a disconnect, and they would have training some places, but they weren't allowed to practice, and and kind of get that real world hands-on experience. And so this whole process kind of helped that to come to pass. So I think that's the presentation.
All right.
Let's see.
Very good. If you all would like to go ahead and unmute your mics, I'll do a couple questions for you, and whoever wants to answer them, you're more than welcome to hop in and so. So my first question for you guys is, think about your current family practice doctor, or you're a doctor, or someone that you know that you go to, your pediatrician stuff. Do you know whether they are an MD or DO? Sorry, anyone can unmute their mics and chime in. Go ahead.
My doctor is an MD, but I have actually never seen him. I've only seen the PAs.
Okay.
Place.
Well, our family doctor is a DO, and I did not know that until I was doing this and looked up to see, and then we see him all the time.
Does that change your feeling about him or about what he does?
It doesn't, but it made me want to ask those interview questions of him to find out why he knows that or what. But I think he's very capable. He's been a great doctor for us.
You know, my wife is recently pregnant, and she just had her first doctor's appointment. And I saw on the kind of the little card that they give us that most of the doctors at that practice were DOs, and it made me want to ask, what brought you to the OB side of things? Kind of interesting.
Does the fact that they are DOs, or that they would be DOs, does that make you more or less likely to want to go to them, or not, or neither?
I would say neither. I mean, I don't think there is like a negative connotation really to me. About a DO. I think I think it's just a little bit more focused training is what it seems like, from what I've researched and everything. I mean, I don't have any quarrels with it.
Yeah. Well, just to throw out my opinion a little bit on it, and I think it goes very closely to what I think is Christian when you interviewed the DO friend of yours.
Uh-huh.
To me, once they get through the medical program, whether it's DO or MD program, once they're in the residency, that's when it really even makes any difference. And so my feeling on it is I have no preference. If they're able to go through all the whatever medical training they've gone through, whatever residency that they've been able to be accepted and get into, then they're just as qualified as an MD or DO. As you mentioned, for some DOs, it's harder to get into the residency. So that means if a DO was able to get into a tougher residency, say plastic surgery, or even OBGYN could be one of them as well, ER, that type of stuff, that means that they had to be above and beyond to be able to beat out other MDs, other DOs, and able to get accepted to that residency program. So I think it really doesn't matter. Once they're through their medical training, once they're through the residency program, that's all that really matters. But that is my opinion. Obviously, there's other opinions around there as well. So another slide that stood out to me that I noticed is, I think it's probably you, Ben, that mentioned it, no, I don't remember, actually, sorry. It might be Christian or Ben. But that BYU, a lot of people heavily recruit through BYU for DO, and I'd imagine it's also for MD as well. But why do you think that is, for anybody that wants to answer?
I think you know what, I don't think it maybe is even just MD or DO, because I'm with the pre-dental society, because I plan on applying to dental school next year, and we had a director of admissions for the University of the Pacific come recently, and he was basically saying that BYU is one of their major recruiting schools. I really think it's because BYU students, they're set apart because of the honor code and the things we live that set us apart. They said the director of admissions said, we love to come here because the BYU students make great, professional students. One of the only drawbacks that he was saying with the BYUI or BYU students is that sometimes they are more hesitant to get it to, I guess, socialize with the rest of the group. They kind of stick in their own little clique, but other than that, they love, their ethics and including their work ethic and, kind of what they stand for.
Very good. Thanks. So the message we take from that is don't be cliquey, people. Just be good students. Okay. Do any of you want to add anything before I let you all go as we wrap things up? Okay. Very good job. I appreciate your hard work on this. Thanks for hanging out with me on a Saturday morning to get this all done with. And you did a great job. And that's about it. So enjoy the rest of your day, everybody.
Thank you.
We'll see you later. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks.